class here, I was making it was a 3-part pattern, pocket, the back of the neck of the apron, and the apron part that I cut out of newsprint. And I will try to, obviously can't make this to scale for you to download, but I'll try to do like a mini one that you can print off and you can look at and try to adjust for your own measurements. And I'll put the measurements of the actual one on there. The ties, I cut 2 ties that were 29 by 3. That obviously you can do, and I'll try to write the measurements down when I do the thing, so you can try to recreate the pattern yourself. You also might be able to find a vintage pattern for just a full apron. I found lots of pictures. That 1928-29 Hirschner's catalog that I use a lot. I did find a lot of examples. These are children's aprons. Really cute. So those were full body aprons. You got to remember how difficult laundry was during these days. Still, everything had to be done by hand. Sometimes you'd have a wringer. Electric. There's some more aprons. The electric washer was a relatively new thing. Electricity was a new thing. Here we have some. Here we go. So you could buy this at Hirschner's. These came pre-stamped, so you could embroidery them. This was some little fancier ones. But this is basically what we're doing. Just a full body apron with a back. I'm not doing the cross straps. It's just a back neck piece, and it has 2 ties in the back. Another one. An example of some that they have actually in color. Color illustrations. And here's some that I found in my 1934 Sears catalog. So the full body apron was a popular choice because your clothes clean, obviously, because you weren't washing your clothes every week. You went as long as you could without washing the clothes. You aired them out, hung them outside, and all that sort of thing. So, since I cut out 10 aprons, I may have gotten a little over ambitious. I tend to do that sometimes. What I'm going to first of all do, I'm going to go through and I'm going to do all the back straps. And what I'm going to do with those is I'm going to fold all the edges in, and then I'm just going to sew it straight down. And if you watched me do that in the big pocket apron video, and then I also made straps in the child size half apron. And we also made straps in the 1930s Reproduction patchwork apron. So the first thing we're going to do is all the straps. Take the straps, and you've seen me do this before. I'm just going to fold it in half, and I'm going to just fold these edges in as I sew. And we're going to, when I get to the corner, I'll fold it in and make, in fact, I probably should just go ahead and do that right now. Make a, so when you just want to fold it down, like make a triangle, and then you're going to fold that in half and pin that. That way you can sew on that and make sure you get your triangle. In fact, I'll probably just start with that and go down. And then I'm just going to do the 2 straps, and then I'm not going to film me doing the other 9 aprons. So when we come back, we'll be joining the back neck piece. This one doesn't tie. Sometimes you have ones that tie, sometimes you have ones that button. This one is just a round circle like this. This is the original one that we're copying. So it's just a round circle. So this piece here, where you can see where the seams are, is the back neck piece. And so that's this piece that I'll be joining to all of the front pieces of the apron. And then we'll getting to the bias tape, and we're going to be doing it. If you watched my Reproduction patchwork one, I didn't want to mess with that. I just slid it in the thing. But this one, on these, we're going to actually be sewing it. You sew the one edge, and then you fold it over and you sew it again. So we're going to be doing it that way for this apron here. So let me get busy on doing the strap. I should probably go iron all these, but just not feeling that today, so I'm not going to. do the same thing again. I'm going to fold it in a triangle. And then of course I will iron both of those before. I'm just going to leave them joined together right now like this so I don't lose them. Okay, on the pockets, I looked at the apron. I wanted to make sure they didn't do bias tape on the pockets too, and they did not. They just folded it under. So I'm just going to be folding the top under and doing a straight stitch across the top, and the folding of the edges won't happen until I put it on the apron, and I'm probably going to iron all those edges so it'll be an easy sew. Connecting the neck piece to the top part of the apron. We'll be doing the French seams. The French seam, you're going to put it together with the sides of the fabric, the right sides, or the sides that you look at. And you do a seam, and then you're going to trim it next close to the seam, and we're going to flip it over and we'll do another seam. So that way the raw edges are enclosed within a seam, and it looks very nice on the both sides. And since this is not a reversible, I thought about doing reversibles, but since these are not reversible, we want the seams to look as nice as we can. So first of all, I'm going to do this one. Then I'm going to go over here. I'm going to do the same thing with this side. And then we'll trim them and we'll do the other seam here. Okay, and now we have, so we've done the seam, so now I'm going to trim close to the seam, not super right up to the seam, but just close. I'm going to do the other one over here too. So we have the two sides sewn, so, and you can see the seam. So now I'm going to flip it over on the sides of the fabric that you don't see, the inside out seams. I'm going to fold it over. I'm going to crease it nicely as much as possible. And I'm going to sew it. Okay, now we look at the back side, because we'll iron this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to iron this, and then after I get done ironing it, I'll sew that down so it'll be nice and flat. Okay, so that's what we have so far. We have the necks joined. Tell you what, I'm just going to go ahead and sew that down right now. Let's just do that. So it's felled flat, sewn flat is what we've done here. And this one too. Now we got both of our seams, the bias tape. And I do recommend, if you're doing a lot of these kind of projects, to get a big roll of the bias tape. It makes it a lot easier than having to mess with little cut pieces. I'm going to start, since we're going to be sewing the ties here eventually after we do all this, I think I'm going to start there. Turn to the inside out part, or the part you don't see. We want to open our bias tape so we can see the inside out part. I'm just going to pin, let's see, I want to move it down a little bit. I'm going to pin that right there. So we got, we're on the wrong side of the fabric, inside out part of the apron, and then we've opened our bias tape, so we're looking at the wrong side of the bias tape too. We're seeing the inside double fold. So this is a double fold bias tape is what I'm using. So we're gonna, so everything is sort of inside out, so to speak. All right, and I'm just going to straight stitch. We're gonna like outline the apron, so to speak, in the bias tape. When we get to a corner, I'm going to fold it in like a triangle, sort of. It's called mitering it. That way it goes around the edges and everything okay. The outline of the fabric. To a curve, just sort of use your fingers to feed it around it. And now we have at the bottom, we have this sort of scalloped edge. Should be easy. We're just going to follow the outline of the fabric using our fingers to sort of mold it as we go. It usually does, you know, swivels sort of easily because unless you're using like a plastic or an oilcloth, most fabric has a little give to it. Now this is the part. I think I'm going to go iron all of this because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be pulling the bias tape over to the right side and then sewing it. I think I'm going to give it, and that's what it'll look like on the back. I think I'm going to iron it first and then we'll come back and do that. I've got the bias tape ironed and all the pieces ironed, and we'll take a look at it. I don't have the bias tape around the neck hole yet. We're going to do that today. So let's take a look at it before we start sewing the bias tape to see what it looks like when we're putting it on. We have it all. Let's see if I can get a good shot of it here. So there's the neck hole, and we don't have it on the neck hole yet, but here is it ironed, and you can see what it looks like on this side of it. Then we're going to sew it on this side around there. So it gives it a real finished look. And when you wash it, whenever I make anything of bias tape, it seems so stiff. And when we did the 1930s patchwork apron, that's what I was thinking. It would look so stiff, but after I washed it, it always gets nice and soft because it's cotton, or this is like a polyester blend one, I think. I should have taken a picture of that same half apron after it was washed to show that it doesn't stay so stiff. Well, let's set this camera up and let's start sewing this bias tape on. The straps and the pocket, iron those. So here's just the pocket ironed, ready to be sewn on. And we have our two ties, and they've been ironed and nice and flat. And of course I didn't do anything to the ends that are going to be, we'll be hooking those. I'll fold those under and everything. And you can see when we talked about how we sort of pinched in and made like a little triangle to get around the pointed part. So you can see where it's going to sew. It'll be like you know, like a line in order to fit around that more pointy part. And the rest just curved very nicely around the curves where the armholes and everything are in the aprons. Let's sew this on, and I'm just going to be using a straight stitch. And ironing it makes it so much easier because you get the whole edge, then the seam and everything, it gets nicely tucked in there, and you don't have to use pins because you've ironed it down. And you're not fighting the fabric the whole time. Good. See here's the back. Okay, so now we're going to be doing the bias tape in the neck hole. Should go iron it, but let me see. Let me see. Maybe I can do it without ironing it. The important thing to me is to get the where the bias tapes were joined. Oh, we'll see. It's a small thing. Maybe we can manage without going and ironing it flat here. Cool now. Of course, now it needs iron. And we have so this goes around, you know, the back of your head. Alright, let's put on the pocket. And I am right-handed, so I'm going to put it oh, that'd be cute. Yeah, I can line it up with the, so there's a picture right below where I was going to put it. So I'm just going to move it down a little, and I can line up my pocket with the same picture that's in the print. See what I mean? So it looks like it's actually just part of the print. I love it when that works like that. Awesome. Okay, so this is a little bit different place than I was originally going to put it, but that's okay. Alright, I'm going to sew back and forth right at the top because it's going to take a lot of strain from use. Pivot my fabric. Love how that worked out, that it matches. I got it to match there. I got it slightly off when I was sewing here, but we need to put our ties on it. The ties right at the point that we made in the arm area here. Here's the curve for the arm area, and here's the little point. There's really nothing to sew this in between. I'm just going to fold the rough edges of the, remember we folded this tie in half to make it, so I'm just going to tuck the edges under it by about an inch. I want them to stay in there. Here, let me see if I can. Okay, so I folded them under inside the little hole. We're going to put that behind the point. I'll line that up. I'm going to line that up with the point is what I'm going to do. Hold it in position. And I'm going to try to just sew on the same spot that I already sewed the bias tape on. Back and forth. Sew that, I guess, in with the bias tape. Didn't think about it at the time. Sew that flat right there. Do the other side. Okay, and again I'm going to flip that over and just get the... We have the finished apron, and you can see that I did my ties. I like to, like I said, I think I said it when I was making the half apron. See, it's roomy enough that multiple people could wear this apron, and you don't have any ties behind the neck, so you just, it's easy to just stick on. And I said in one of the other videos, I like to be able to, if you've ever worn an apron, you know your ties come loose and you're constantly readjusting. So I like aprons that I can tie around the front of me, wrap them around the back, and then tie them in the front. It's easier just to adjust it that way. So I'm happy. I think it turned out cute. And like I said, it'd be difficult for me to load up actually a life-size pattern and everything because it's big. I hope this has been fun. I really love the full aprons that were popular in the 1930s and the 1940s. You had, I have a, this is like a multifunctional pattern from the 20s. Aprons actually started out as they looked like full dresses that were children wore, and all at the turn of the century, 1900s to 1920s, full aprons that women wore that looked like dresses. They had sleeves and everything. They went over like a house coat almost. They went over their whole dress, and then they became just like aprons that we know. In the 20s, you started getting away from the sleeves and the dress and migrating more towards an actual apron with the neck holes and everything like that we see, and the ties that tie behind the necks. This full coverage apron, and then somewhere along to the 40s or 50s, we migrated more towards the half aprons. It really makes sense if you think about it. In the 50s, we had the beginning of the ready-made meals and things that were more convenient, canned goods and instant mixes and stuff became really more of the norm in the 50s. And so women weren't doing the heavy cooking that they were doing. They were getting away from canning their own foods. But you had this migration towards less work in the kitchen with the dishwashers and the appliances that were being made for women. So we migrated from the full dress to the long apron to the full coverage and then to the half apron. And now a lot of women don't wear aprons at all. I find aprons very useful because I do a lot of cooking and canning and scratch cooking in the kitchen, and I'm a messy cook. I will admit it. I get it everywhere. So, and I don't want to have to worry about my clothes or having to run and change my clothes. The mailman comes, I can do just what my 4 sisters did 100 years ago, and I can rip off my apron and sling it somewhere unseen, and I can run to the front door. And I look presentable because my apron has taken the brunt of my mess. It's a practical way to stay clean, and if you're doing a lot of cooking and canning, aprons are awesome. And I just love using, I have some cut out that are modern fabric. In fact, I have quite a few that I've cut out because I'm going to use them for a gift. But I also have this beautiful vintage fabric that I really wanted to use, and it's a kitchen fabric. It has fruits and vegetables. It has pink bananas. Isn't that awesome? So here's a close-up. Pink bananas. It's all pink and browns and greens. And the other one I have are pinks. Same kitchen. It's a kitchen scene with bread basket and knives and onions being chopped up. And it's pinks and turquoises and greens. So it's really that sort of 1950s to early 60s color scheme. And it's really sort of out of my 30s, 40 wheelhouse that I really like. But I loved the fabric, and I love the hand or the feel of these old cottons. They're just a heavier cotton than we have today. And if you've ever cut vintage cotton, you'll know what I'm talking about, because the scissors just go through, and it's so easy to cut pattern pieces and the pieces of the, according to the pattern out of vintage cotton, because it just lays there so well, and it's hard to describe unless you've ever worked with vintage cottons. So I'm rambling a little bit about the history of aprons here, but I hope you really enjoyed this video, and I definitely will try to get that PDF loaded up with the, at least the outline, the miniature, so you can, and the dimensions that I use. Look out there for apron. There are so many apron patterns out there, and it's easy to find a full, just Google search full apron or full coverage apron or full coverage kitchen apron. If you want a vintage one, add vintage before that. You're not going to find very many printable ones, for the same reason that I can't put up a printable one unless you want to do it in 45 pieces, because of, it's a big, it's like trying to download a dress pattern off online or something. So, but they're cheap. You can find, and you can find them on eBay and even Walmart. The apron ones aren't going to get that elaborate, so you're probably not going to spend that much money. And if at last resort, if you can't find a pattern, look around in antique stores and stuff for an actual old apron and just copy that. So this has been Angie from Canterbury Trails Farm. Thanks for joining us. Bye.